Ready to go.
All right.
It's rock and roll, buckaroo.
All right. All right. I believe we are live. Okay. So let's give people a chance maybe to filter in. We got our live chat there, and I think we got it confirmed. Okay. Yeah. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Foregen supporters, donors, and people who are all on a live stream here. And I figured, just to kind of shut off here a little bit, we could do a little bit of introductions, and maybe for some of you who are new to the organization, maybe we can start with our founder and president, Vincenzo Aiello, if you wanted to give a little short introduction and who you are and how it all came to be.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Vincenzo Aiello, founder and president of Foregen. I founded this fantastic company in 2010 in Italy, and then I extended and I did the same. I founded the same company in the United States in 2012. Then, it took me 4 years to find the right scientist, which is the key of our success today. I met Elena Bondioli, which is our main scientist, at the end of, actually it was in June 2013. And we started to do a kind of research together. The first publication we did was a small study on bull's foreskin, decellularization of bull's foreskins. And it was pretty good to test the technology, our technology. Then we decided to go further in our research. And in 2015, I wanted to talk about this huge problem, of infants that have been circumcised without wanting it. And so I did this campaign on Kickstarter in 2015, which was called Who for the Missing Piece. And the entire team collaborated with me to achieve the goal, the final goal, that was the fundraising of $40,000 for this goal. And at that time, we wanted to make people aware of this huge problem, because unfortunately, most people don't even know this is a problem. Then, the research, we decided with Elena to test this technology on adult foreskins. So what we did, and we published it in 2018, the decellularization of 15 human foreskins, and was very successful, the entire work. I'm very proud to work with Elena. She's a great scientist, a great woman, a great mother, and she understands the problem from also her point of view. It's very important to have her with us. In last year, we started, we implemented our work, and we started to do the animal trial, and we finished the work with rats. So next year we're going to go with sheep. It's very important because we are going to test the technology on a sheep. We want to apply all these results on animals in 2023 on a human trial on 15 candidates. I'm done.
Well, I mean, Enzo, I think I speak for all of us and for all of the community that we're thankful that you started this company, right? I mean, it's something that has given hope to so many people, and like us, and of course our Chief Science Officer, Garrett Cunningham, as well, who's been very important and integral in getting our work and pushing everything forward and making so much progress. So you want to talk about yourself, Cunningham, and kind of what this means to you, if you I know there's
I know yeah, I know. Where do I start? I guess my name's Eric Cunningham. Some of you might know me, some of you probably don't. I've been with Foregen for 5-6 years, something like that now. It's been a while. Like I said, my background is in biomedical engineering and tissue engineering, and so it's kind of specifically tailored just for this type of project. And kind of like what Enzo said earlier about this problem not being really known. People don't talk about it. He lives in Italy. Things culturally are very different in America, where it's kind of a taboo issue. People aren't taken seriously. It's kind of mocked and laughed at. But if you go online and see like some men that are struggling, you see very real pain, and it's just compounded by that pain not being recognized and validated. So it feels good to be working on a project that seeks to kind of undo the physical harm, but also kind of give people and give men, people affected by this, some sort of hope that, life is going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we all kind of feel that way. It's something that, it's a problem that affects so many people. And if you don't necessarily have someone who listens to you, then that can make it definitely worse, and it's finding people who can sympathize and working on a solution, I think it's really important for, it's what we hear from so many supporters out there. And, I mean, and, for you, William, obviously you're a research advisor and you've really been, key in, helping to, for example, push forward the histology study and offering your expertise. I was kind of curious, like, if you wanted to talk a little about yourself and kind of what's important to you about the project. I'm sure, you have a similar experience, but.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here. It's always really interesting, the research you guys are doing. And that's what really caught my eye with your organization. You're the only organization that's looking for a positive future and trying to remedy the situation. And that really stood out to me. My background, William Musa, my background is in regenerative medicine, biotechnology, applied molecular techniques, and specifically tissue regeneration. So as you can imagine, your projects have really drawn me in, and I volunteered to help Foregen with their histology project, which we'll share with you in a little bit here.
Yeah, man, it's definitely, the research is so important. It's really kind of obviously the core of what we do and building a solution. And, obviously part of that, the research is so important, but we also have Ryan Jones here as well, who's our communications officer, and he is integral kind of in helping to, get this information out there. And Ryan, you kind of want to talk a little bit how maybe you kind of came on board and obviously what it means to you and what you've been kind of doing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tyler. So I have a background in international studies and public policy. My undergraduate degree was in international studies, and then I got a master's degree in public administration, public policy. And my first encounter with this subject was in 2015. I was taking this class in grad school where essentially we would have to learn how to evaluate public programs, government programs, determine if their objectives are worthwhile, if they're meeting their goals, if it's a efficient use of public treasure, et cetera. And so in that class, for my end of term paper, I decided to look at the mass scale circumcision programs that are going on in Africa. And so I looked at Swaziland and just found a lot of shortcomings, a lot of serious problems with those programs. And then I started to realize, like, oh, this is primarily coming from the United States. It's being pushed on the rest of the world. And why is that? Why is it that the, American health institutions like, like the CDC, for example, why do groups like that, very clearly encourage this procedure when pretty like virtually every other organization around the world doesn't? If you look at Germany, if you look at Australia, if you look at other countries like that, it's like they almost take a diametrically opposed view. Italy, for example. So I find that to be very interesting, and it's very indicative of some serious problems here, some serious biases and not very clear thinking. So I also have a background in communications work for a variety of different nonprofits. So I reached out to you, Tyler, and I shot an email off to Foregen. I was asking if there's any way I could help out, and you were very open and brought me in. So I started attending weekly meetings with everyone and just sort of worked into a role where I could work with you all on trying to facilitate more consistent communication and sort of develop and implement a broad communication strategy. So you and I and Tyler have been working together on a lot of that. And so, yeah, for me personally, it's just really great to be involved in a proactive organization, really working towards a real solution. And this problem of male genital cutting is a problem that has been going on for centuries, thousands of years. And it's not a debate that has started in our lifetimes. It's been going on for a very long time. And so to be a part of an organization with a real shot at being the first to offer men the ability to heal is a great it's a great opportunity. I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I think, and well, I'll just introduce myself as well. My name is Tyler Droz, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer. So I've probably been here for about 5 or 6 years myself. And for me, many of the same reasons. The technology interested me. Looking for a solution, not only just for myself, but also helping people all over the world. I see people communicating with us from from South Korea to Australia, China, South America to Canada, all kinds of different locations. And it really highlights for me just kind of how important it is, for so many men out there. And that's really what kind of what drew me to Foregen, is being able to do something that just, goes beyond my own, my own personal life. And that's going to mean something for so many people once we get there, once we're successful. And so kind of go over to the topics we wanted to discuss today. Maybe Ryan, you and me can kind of start off with this one, but we kind of wanted to look at also, part of what we've been doing recently as well is kind of, spearheading, more communications and basically, getting more information out there. And I think, Ryan, you really kind of played a key role in that and, working with me and the rest of the team and being able to get that out there and talk with our community and make sure they kind of know what is going on. So if you kind of wanted to comment on that, like what approaches you've taken or what you found maybe most effective, or there's maybe certain aspects you wanted to share about that, I figure kind of give you the spotlight there because you've done so much. You've been so important in that.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's really, again, it's been a pleasure to kind of to be invited in, and to help out. So in a previous organization that I volunteered for, years ago, I was an AmeriCorps Vista member, and I was assigned to an organization where I was the communications officer. So I'd have to meet with a bunch of different stakeholders like every day and put together a weekly newsletter and other periodical publications. So I sort of drew upon that experience, and it it wasn't initially my idea, but it was an idea that came from within this organization to start pushing out regular weekly updates and even daily, if we can. So, you and I, Tyler, really latched onto that and took advantage of that opportunity. So for the past few months or so, we have been really pushing to take the content of our meetings and generate weekly updates and just keep creating content and keep our maybe our family, but our supporters, that was like a good Freudian slip, our supporters like abreast of what's going on in the organization. So, and also like sort of build, just sort of like stay in touch with the whole space of people who are concerned with this issue of circumcision. So I try to keep tabs on what's going on, what big news, occurrences are happening, things that we can sort of, make sure that people who are aware of circumcision as an issue are also aware of us, because I think that there are, if you look at the popularity of recent films like American Circumcision or books or protests or, pop culture phenomenon like popular Joe Rogan coming out against circumcision or Brother K ending up on the Peter Tosh show. I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people are hearing about this issue, which is something that didn't happen back in the day. It was almost obscure back in like the 80s, to find books about this. So at any rate, I'm trying to help, and we're all trying to sort of like branch out and make sure that people who are aware of this issue hear about us. And so we're just really trying to keep the content rolling out there and making sure people know about us.
Well, and like, for example, you wrote that one letter to Discover Magazine, right? It's kind of, because, like part of pushing back is also, if you look at these mainstream publications like them, they just kind of, took a very blasé approach to like, how they were just using these, neonatal fibroblasts in research. And I think part of what we want to do is kind of to push back and kind of, maybe plant the idea in people's minds, like, hey, maybe we should kind of think about something like this. And that's, being able to give people like a different argument than maybe what they're used to hearing is really important. And I think part of what you do, right, that's what's important in your communication efforts.
Yeah, and a lot of credit goes to Eric Cunningham and William. You both really brought that to the rest of our attention, and of course I thought it was a great idea. But you're right. I mean, that article in Discover Magazine, where they were basically extolling the magical properties of the human foreskin for everyone else but the person it was born attached to.
Right.
I think a lot of people out there in the world may read articles like that or see them and maybe inwardly feel a little put off by it, but not really understand why or what's going on. So we're here to kind of give you that perspective. Like, wait a second, like maybe there are some, well, not maybe, there are some massive problems with just taking tissue for no reason and then repurposing it and selling it and making a profit. But so yeah, I think that's another sort of way to kind of get ourselves out there, is to issue formal responses to publications as prominent and mainstream as Discover Magazine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole goal. Part of, obviously we are working on a solution that's, for so many men, but it's also making sure that people are aware that this is a problem in the first place, right? I mean, if people don't understand that, it's going to be difficult to, be able to get out there and show people, why something like Foregen is important. I think that's always what I communicate as well, and we try to show is that these approaches go hand in hand. Showing
Exactly.
people, the harms of it. Or for example, with the Discovery Magazine, where there's conflicts of interest where people want to use this tissue for research. And then obviously, like for us, saying, hey, we want to offer a solution to fix some of the damage that was caused.
Exactly. And just to sort of go off on that for a little bit, in some of the articles that I had written that's published in our commentarium about what's been going on in Africa, it's the same sort of a deal because, as you know, millions of men have been cut over there and children, and they're not all happy about it. And there's a lot of people speaking up. So, like you just said, as people are made aware of this as an issue, it's we don't want people to just be left feeling angry and resentful and as if there's nothing they can do about it, and so we're here letting people know we're working every single day to try to do something about this. So, those energies can be channeled into productive means.
Yeah, and I think that might be kind of a good segue, William, into kind of some of the work we've been doing with HistologiX recently, because part of course, being able to achieve this goal is this histology study we've been working on, which is being able to kind of understand, the structures of the foreskin and what exactly is there. And, that's partially important for the human trial and just the research in general we're doing, but then also for, really like being able to offer up-to-date data and more recent data for this movement and this kind of purpose in general. Because being able to have a, peer, obviously, ultimately our goals in here is to have a peer-reviewed publication, which is important. People being able to kind of counter-argue and basically say, hey, look, there's important things here. It's not just some extra piece of skin or something that's useless. There's actual structures here that provide function, that provide a purpose. And this is kind of what's, obviously the goal of the study here is to demonstrate that. And also, for example, the histology study is also going to be important in being able to provide data for the 3D printing or the bioprinting approach that, we ultimately would like to research, being able to offer our procedure on a larger scale. And one of the things too, and this is maybe, William, you can comment here as well if you want, but basically, part of the difficulties in collecting tissue for the histology study and kind of, it's part of it is really there's extra criteria here. So I don't know if you wanted to kind of comment on that and, some of the difficulties we've kind of run into, but fortunately we've resolved most of them.
So yeah, one of the big issues for us as an organization was ethically sourcing tissue samples for our histology study. So one of the big ethical hurdles is if you go into any pharmaceutical company or any office that specializes in sourcing tissues for medical programs, the first thing they'll say is kind of what Ryan was pointing to earlier, where it's, oh, we can get that from a hospital, from an infant, no problem, easy. And that completely goes against our ethical standing. So we had to source an organization that would source the tissues that we needed for our histology study ethically. And one of the constraints we had was we wanted to make sure it met all of the local laws, all of the ethical values that we hold as an organization. So that alone was a harder thing to. I mean, you could speak to that. That was a little bit harder than what people would think it would be because of how systemic the procedure is. Even overseas in Europe, when they want to use neonatal prepuce, neonatal foreskin that was removed in circumcision, when they want to use that, they look toward the U.S. and try to source it from the U.S. So we were able to find a fantastic organization that was tied in with another organization that's actually performing some of the histology research, and we were able to source the tissues. And then the next hurdle we ran into was transportation, because the chemicals needed for the histology to essentially capture that piece of skin or tissue in its state when it's removed. The chemicals needed for that are, depending on the country and depending on the transportation laws, considered hazardous or flammable or biohazardous. So there was a lot of discussion back and forth, and there was a lot of essentially really boring paperwork we had to do to make sure that we could source those materials and get them to where we needed to go.
Yeah, and part of it's kind of like, you know, if you ever heard of kind of like the triangle you have where you have like cost, speed, and quality, you're kind of, it's oftentimes you can only pick two of those. If you want to do it really fast, it's going to be expensive, and it's, you know, and you want the quality, you pick those two. If you want to do it really cheaply, well, it's not going to be necessarily fast or the, you know, the best quality. So we had to kind of, with ours, we also had to get like every corner of the triangle with our tissue collection, you know, which is the difficult part, making sure that, because they have to section it at the site, they have to have a site with cadaveric tissue to be able to use that for the histology study, and then also being able to have the skill set to do that and the chemicals. So it's kind of these different factors that come together that are a little more special when it comes to this, like a histology study. And maybe we can kind of go over to some of the images we have to share with people. And this first part here is just kind of, we can talk about that now, but it's kind of just it's just an images from the assay optimization. So basically the test they'll be using on the foreskin sample, that's going to come later, but these images can kind of give people an idea of what exactly it is we're looking at and kind of what the approach is here. So let me see if I can share my screen with that, and we can discuss that. Okay, I think everyone should be able to see my screen. Can you guys see that?
I can see it, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so then William, if you want me to maybe go to the first slide here with the different antibodies we have, that'd be good for you?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent start. This research was performed by HistologiX in the UK, and they're tied in with Tissue Solutions, who is the company that was chosen to do the sourcing for our tissues. HistologiX is doing the histology study, and this is their work. This is a showcase of the work they've done thus far in the assay optimization. And I just kind of want to take a second to say, kind of compound on what Tyler mentioned, this is an important first step to make sure everything's working correctly, and that it's working correctly, and that we have what we need to carry on the rest of the study. And these are control slides. So these are slides that have a known positive presence of the targeted entities. If it's a cell or if it's a component of a cell, they have a known positive presence, and they're very well categorized. HistologiX comes with a background in a lot of clinical and pharmaceutical types of histological research. So they were very well suited for this type of research and for helping us with this. And most importantly, they were excited to help us. That was kind of what Tyler and I were talking about, finding an organization that would meet those three triangle points. And part of that was they wanted to do this research. They were excited about it, and they jumped into it. So without further ado, this is the first slide showing the different biomarkers we're using. So we're using what's called IHC, immunohistochemical staining. So it's a combination of chemical stain and immunological response from the body. So we're using antibodies designed specifically tailored to look for the presence of these different entities. So maybe we'll go to the first slide, which is cytokeratin 20, which all the different markers on that page were chosen not just because of they were looking for something that we need to find or we need to show presence of in the prepuce, which, as mentioned before, will help with the 3D printing and the overall understanding of trying to regenerate this very surprisingly complex tissue. But they were also chosen because they are very prevalent in the clinical world. So they're very well known with pathologists. So cytokeratin 20, for example, is a well-known marker for different types of colorectal carcinomas, Merkel cell tumors, different entities like that. But in this case, we're using it for the detection of cytokeratin within this, the cytoplasm, cytokeratin 20 within the cytoplasm. And on this slide here, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a positive hit with the cytokeratin 20 in the small intestine. And then if you zoom in on the middle slide, it shows those very specific entities and the epithelial of the small intestines that are positive. The pink is the positive area. The bluish purple is just the outside background, essentially, the negative area. And another very important feature is on the very rightmost picture is a negative slide. And this is important for our research to show that these aren't staining indiscriminately, that the immunostain that we have is working correctly. So this is the same picture from the left. It's the same slide, essentially. It's the same tissue taken from the same donor. And these are, I believe these are, small intestine is a really good control sample. And what we do with 2 slides from the same donor is we make sure one will stain positive, where we expect those positive cells to hit, or entities. And on the right-hand side, we're showing the negative, and the negative is showing that it's not indiscriminately marking and staining, and that in fact our background stain is working correctly as well, which in this case is the bluish purple. So if you want to go to another slide, Tyler, we can talk about, this is the chromogranin A, and we can see again on the left-hand side we have these little islets, and then we zoom in the center, we can see a positive hit, and on the right we can see a negative, and we've outlined it in blue, or HistologiX outlined it in blue for us. We can see the outline in blue is a negative control of the same region, showing that we have discrete, very specific staining on these locations. And these are staining neuroendocrine islets, and the 10x. Oh, sorry, in the sample here. And yeah, if you want to go to another slide.
Yeah, we can go maybe to the this one right here. There's a little bit of a typo there, supposed to be smooth muscle. Yeah. But this is the one that we also wanted to touch on here too. There's a lot going on.
So yeah, we're not going to go through every slide because they're some of them are pretty boring, and they're all essentially the same. And we can look at the smooth muscle slide. So this is very important for Foregen to identify the smooth muscle and to stain it and show its positive presence in the foreskin. And that's something that some papers and some researchers have questioned in the past. They've said maybe there isn't as much there, or for whatever reason that they don't believe it's there. But especially for Foregen, because we're trying to regenerate this type of tissue or this type of muscle and its orientation in the tissue, we really want to know its presence, and we want to be able to detect it with accuracy. So again, this is just preliminary first steps for the histology study. And we can see the presence of smooth muscle with this stain. We can see a working negative control. And this is a actin smooth muscle stain. And this is looking for smooth muscle bundles. And just to kind of give you an idea of what they would use that clinically for is certain malignancies, stuff like that. And I forgot to mention with chromogen A, I was looking at that at the time. Chromogen A would be looking for the previous slide, different types of neuroendocrine malignancies in that case as well. A lot of these stains are used by pathologists for malignancy testing, stuff like that. So like neuroendocrine tumors and stuff with chromogen A. And then we actually have one of the, so there's not slides for it, but one of the markers, CD31 endothelial cells, they're still testing that one. It was actually, speaking of the difficulties of tissue, obtaining tissues, we've actually had a few difficulties in some of the stains working how in manners that we would expect them to work versus how they're actually working. The CD31. So that would be an endothelial cell stain. And that one's been quite problematic for HistologiX. We've gone through a couple iterations of testing phases, and the optimization just wasn't working well. And one of the key features and one of the reasons we went with HistologiX is that they have the ability to quantify types of cells, types of stains. So we can stain with, let's say, CD31 and get a quantification, or for example, the actin smooth muscle bundles, and we can actually get a computer algorithm that will quantify the numbers of the cells or positive hits in that sample. So that's one of the really important features that Foregen hopes to showcase and use to help our other research move forward in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely important. I mean, this work is, like you said, it's very, we kind of got a little bit into the weeds here with it, but I think it's important for people to see all the work that, that goes into this. And, you have phone calls back and forth and, determining what, for example, what assays we're going to be doing. And then, in some cases, one of them here, the other ones they've been successful with it, but the last one's kind of a little bit tricky. So, you got to kind of talk with them about that and make sure that, we get on the right track with it. But I think it's just, like I said, it's good to give people an idea of how all this works and, what goes into doing a study like this. Even, for example, with, or something relatively like, it's like a foreskin, it's not like a whole organ, say, for example, right? Where you might have, like the heart or the liver or something. But I think it gives people an idea. And of course, we're going to have, this is the assay optimizations right now. We'll obviously be, moving forward with HistologiX, and we'll be able to share more with you too, as time goes on and we get updates from them. But I figure this would be kind of a good little point here to show some of the pictures and the results that we have from them. Let me stop sharing here. There we go. And I figured the next thing we could talk about here, let me pull it up here, might be good. We can kind of go into a little bit of the animal trials. And I think it'd be kind of good if you could just kind of give a little bit of a breakdown. Some of the things we're kind of looking at, like, for example, say an immune response, biocompatibility, and what kind of goes into something like this that we have to kind of do before we go to, like, say, a human trial. And what are some of the most important things? Obviously, there's two parts. We got the rat model and a sheep model. The rat model, obviously, we just finished up. But if you wanted to kind of touch on some of those points, I thought it might be kind of good for our audience to understand.
Yeah. So before you get into human clinical trials, you obviously have to, or I'll say, regulatory agencies demand that you have a successful animal model. And for us, we had two phases. We had phase one was rats. Phase two was going to be sheep. In both cases, we're looking for something a little different. Phase one was all about what's called biocompatibility. Biocompatibility, it sounds like an easy to grasp concept when you first kind of hear about it. You're like, oh, okay, it just means that a material or a device or whatever it doesn't get rejected after it's implanted, but that's not quite right. There's one scholar named David Williams. I believe he's at Wake Forest right now. He wrote this phenomenal paper, or two different papers. One defining what biocompatibility is, and the mechanisms the body undergoes when it's integrating the I'll say implant or the material. The other one, I think it's actually just titled "There is no such thing as a biocompatible material," because the biocompatibility is actually not a characteristic of the material. It's actually a characteristic of the material and the biological host system. So for instance, let's say you have hydroxyapatite, which is a material that's used a lot in bone tissue engineering. And I'm forgetting what they use it with, but it's kind of like it takes the form of a ceramic. It works pretty good for bone tissue engineering. It's like I said, so it's great for bone tissue engineering, high biocompatibility. If you take that same material and put it elsewhere in the body's not going to like that because you'd say that there is no biocompatibility or very low biocompatibility in that case. So it's a, like I said, it's not just the material itself, it's the interaction with the host. If you take a material that or if for simplicity, though, I'll just kind of refer to biocompatibility in terms of the material. If it has kind of low biocompatibility, it's the body is going to react badly. Usually it's going to reject it, or it's going to form scar tissue around it. It might encapsulate it, try to push it out. If you get like a sliver or something like that stuck in your thumb and you can't get it out, the body will build like a fibrous capsule and literally physically push it out of the skin. That's like one example of what the body would do. Something with high biocompatibility, it integrates. The body kind of will look at it as if it is part of itself. So we talked about the extracellular matrix. Extracellular matrix is a very, very complicated kind of material thing. And if you're trying to engineer a new tissue, you want something that's similar to that, to the native extracellular matrix. By integration, basically, it kind of means that or if it does integrate, it basically kind of means that the body doesn't necessarily differentiate between itself and the native extracellular matrix and whatever the implant that you just put in there. It might be a slightly different material, but the body will, you'll still have cells invade it, and they'll degrade it over time or at a specific rate and replace that material that was implanted with native extracellular matrix. So one of the labs I worked in, we use PEG hydrogels or polyethylene glycol, and that's a synthetic material, but cells would degrade it at a specific rate and, like I said, replace it with actual extracellular matrix. So what we were looking for with this first phase was, like I said, was biocompatibility. And it was basically taking segments from the decellularized adult donor foreskin tissue from that was developed from our 2018 paper, and implanted under the skin on the backs of these rats. And it was basically kind of seeing, does it integrate or does the body reject it? And we had experimental group, control group, and it actually went very well. The material integrated really well. So biocompatibility is not going to be an issue. That's the first thing you kind of need to find out. After you find, after you kind of get that affirmation, then you can move on to more specific questions. So in our case, vascularization, innervation, make sure mechanical properties are correct. Form, basically, does it engineer, or excuse me, does it form the tissue that you're interested in? So what we'll be doing with the next phase, we'll be taking the same decellularized scaffolds and grafting those onto sheep. And like I said, this phase will be looking at do cells from the sheep invade that scaffold, is there angiogenesis, which is the formation of blood vessels? Do nerve axons migrate up into it? Things of that nature. And if we get the confirmation that that is what happens, that's kind of considered that is going to be considered a successful phase of animal trials, and then we'll be moving on to human trials. So that's pretty much. Anything I missed or anything that you're muted, Tyler? Tyler, you're muted.
Yeah. Anyway, I was saying that, yeah, I was muted there for a second. Anyway, I was saying, no, I think you covered a lot there, because it's very important for people to understand that, this is a very necessary component of what we're doing. And we're testing things like you mentioned, biocompatibility, where it's very dependent on the environment, for example. So it's not a property, it's something that is kind of changing. It's almost kind of, I wouldn't say elusive, right? But it's like something that you have to test.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it's, biocompatibility as just a concept. It's like I said, the paper that David Williams wrote, it's a couple years old. I mean, he's a very good writer. He's one of the few kind of modern academics that, especially in like biomaterial science and biomedical engineering, that actually is like
readable.
He's a very good writer. Like his writing is enjoyable to read, which is very, very odd, very unique. But he talks about a lot, even like veteran academics, veteran, people, doctors, scientists in tissue engineering, regenerative medicine. I don't know about now, but at least when he wrote that paper, that was something they were routinely using incorrectly.
Even professionals in the field.
Yeah, because it's a part of it's just it is kind of an odd concept. But he even kind of talks about the consequences of misdefining it.
Right.
Because if you're misdefining what this thing is, I'm trying to think, it's been so long since I've read it. I'm trying to remember what some of the examples are. Basically, it's you're engineering devices, implants, what have you, with a flawed understanding of how the body interacts with it.
If the foundation is off, then everything else is going to be affected by it, which makes a lot of sense. And that's such an important concept for even people in the field to understand very clearly, right? Who are doing that work.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that kind of, talking about some of the animal trials, I think it kind of segues very well into, what we kind of want to do with the, the human trials. So obviously right now, the second part of animal trials, obviously Enzo, we talked with Dr. Palumbo, and she mentioned that their plan is to start that in January. And then from what I understand, talking with them, it shouldn't be it probably actually be shorter than what they expected. So we'll be doing that from January, then probably to April or May or so of 2022. And I think then what's important, we also want to discuss too, Cunningham, on this, and this is where some of your expertise comes in, but basically how with the human trials and what we're going to do there is kind of a little bit of a different approach from what maybe we had originally thought, kind of an in vivo one and using the body itself. If you want to maybe comment a little bit on that, kind of what's important for people to understand there.
Yeah. So a few years ago when we really started getting going with this project, let me back up a little bit. With tissue engineering and regen med, they're giant fields, and there's a lot of different ways you can go about solving problems. I'll put it that way. And one of the ways is actually, let me go back even further. Let me start what's called the tissue engineering triad. So the tissue engineering triad is I'm not going to talk about it. So
What everything
cells,
is relevant.
scaffolding, right? Well, it's like how much how much time do I want to get, or how far in the weeds do I want to go?
Sure.
So you have three things. You have cells, scaffolding, and then what I actually just call regulatory signals. So those can be chemical, mechanical, or electrical. More often than not, they're chemical. Kind of rarely are they electrical. That's usually only in like nervous tissue or cardiac tissue. And then mechanical, that actually is also very important. But that's kind of a more recent thing. Things have over like last 20, 30 years have begun to be looked in kind of under that framing. Historically, it's always been kind of from a chemical perspective. So anyway, the idea is if you have, you should be able to engineer any tissue in the body you want with the right combination of those three things. Like this, cells, scaffolding, and regulatory signals. Traditionally, or there's been two ways about engineering tissues, though, or the way you would go about combining those. First, kind of, I'll say the more traditional way, it's the other one thing about tissue engineering in regen med is it's very multidisciplinary. Because like my background is biomedical engineering and chemical engineering, but you can go to like biology departments, they will study regenerative medicine. You can go to chemistry departments, they're doing regen med stuff sometimes, depending on where you go. You know, then you have like physicians and doctors, MDs, that are also doing it. I'm trying to think. There's mechanical engineering departments now that are starting to do stuff, chemical engineering departments. And each kind of discipline has their own like philosophy and kind of approach to how they would solve the problem. So that's why you kind of come up with these different ways of approaching a problem. The very traditional way is taking a scaffold, or you're doing outside the body, or in vitro, I guess. Take a scaffold, whatever, and you take some cells from the patient or what have you. You somehow seed those onto that scaffold, and then you put in the scaffold. It contains, let's say, those regulatory signals, so like some sort of chemical mediator that'll influence those cells. And let's keep it there for keeping it simple. And that's put into some sort of incubator. Typically, they kind of just refer to that as like a bioreactor. There are thousands and thousands of different kinds for different applications. And it's basically, like I said, it's an incubator. You put that in there, the cells mature and grow, invade, divide. If they're stem cells, they'll differentiate, and they will engineer that tissue, assuming they have like the right nutrients and waste is removed. And then that new tissue is then implanted into that patient that those cells were taken from originally. That's kind of one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is not using a bioreactor, or I'll say a man-made bioreactor. It's using the body's own wound healing mechanisms. So probably best way to describe this is with skin. So if you get a cut and it cuts all the way down to the dermal layer, like it's just really bad, really deep, it'll scar. What you can't, or what we've kind of learned you can do, is with some biomaterials, is you can put some sort of scaffolding material in that wound that the cells that would kind of divide and kind of repair that wound, they will kind of latch on and start migrating across, and what it kind of does is it kind of guides the healing process, and it like kind of controls and really facilitates it. And you won't get like scarring, because scarring is kind of it's an evolutionary process that, or one of the reasons for it, it's a evolutionary process that mammals kind of developed, kind of a survival. If you get like a really bad wound, the tissue in the cells there kind of try to repair it really quickly to basically keep it from getting infected or bleeding out or something like that. And that's kind of why we have it. But placing in a scaffold, like I said, it kind of guides and controls the healing process. It kind of prevents the tissue from doing that. Well, with what we're doing, we can kind of use that same approach, because they do this with other tissues as well. Like there's with cardiac tissue, because I was on a project a couple of years ago where there was I'm forgetting the name of the condition. It was a problem with the left ventricle, and the group I was working with, we were using decellularized cardiac tissue that we were making into these patches, and we were it was basically cutting out the damaged part of the heart tissue, and we're going to place this scaffolding into that wound, or basically wound we made, and that was going to repair that piece of tissue or of the heart. Same principle can be applied to the human foreskin, where, and this is going to be partially what the this next phase of animal trials is really going to be helping to inform us how exactly we're going to go about doing this. But say like a scar is opened up, the scaffold be placed in there, and you'll have this theoretically the cells, so skin cells, blood vessels, nerve axons will all migrate up into that matrix and regenerate that tissue. You're muted again, Tyler.
I'm just being silly today. But yeah, I think like you mentioned, obviously it's a little bit of a shift in approach for us. But I think with this next upcoming animal trial, it'll really give us some solid data on how it's going and what it looks for us.
It's there are I think definitely advantages to doing it this way. But like theoretically, you could also do it, like I said, in like a bioreactor, because the Wake Forest project with the engineered vaginas, that's what they did. They took I don't remember what material they used for the scaffold, but they took cells from the girls and seeded onto the scaffold, and they incubated that, and then implanted that into the girls, and then the surrounding tissue vascularized it and innervated it. So like I said, that is one way we could potentially do it, but especially the scale that we, to meet the demand that we have, because that YouGov poll said 5 million men in the United States, and alone. That number is also, I think, kind of muted because circumcision or satisfaction with circumcision status is heavily tied to false belief, and there are false beliefs surrounding like the anatomy and stuff like that. So I think as time goes on, that number will get higher, because in 1995, John Duckett, he estimated there was 1 million. What do you say? That would pay good money were a procedure available or something like that. I can't remember what he said. So just about 20, I can't do mental math, getting close to 30 years.
Either way.
So anyway, just due to the scale, using the human body itself, one, I think it'll give you much better results, but also there would need to be like a giant facility.
Just to make them, just like
yeah,
make the scaffolds and grow them and regenerate them separately.
Yeah. So like, I think just realistically, it's a much smarter way of going about it.
Definitely one of the advantages for sure. So yeah, so I think, I mean, right now we probably want to go to our next and our last topic, which I think is it's a very important one. And this is something we're really excited to announce and to share with all of you. And let me actually go over here. I can share my screen. Just pull it up here. Okay. So you guys can all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So we actually have something very special to share with everybody at the end of the year here. And we actually received just recently the finished abstract. So basically all of the documentation and things put together from Dr. Bondioli for the human clinical trial. And this is something that I like Enzo to talk a little bit about, because he, of course, is our founder and our president. And this is kind of, in many ways, part of our end goal. And it's really something that's been, just a collaborative effort between so many people, of course, Vincenzo himself, the team in Italy, Dr. Bondioli, who Enzo recruited, everybody, of course, around the world too, all the supporters and donors who contributed to get this far. And this is something that we all wanted to share with all of you at the end of the year here in December, a little maybe early Christmas holiday present for all of you. So Enzo, maybe if you want to just talk a little bit about this plan, how you kind of work with Elena, Dr. Bondioli on this, and maybe we can go through a little bit of the details here. I'm sure people will be excited to see this. And also I should mention too, this is something that we will be publishing. So we might not go over today, but you'll be able to go through it on your own time. So Enzo, I'll turn it over to you now, and you can talk a little about this. We're on the first page here.
Yeah, just I want to say, first of all, it's very important for me to be here today, because it's a really big announcement for me. And, I started this company with my old friend, Carlo Alberto Cirioni, 11 years ago. And at that time was a dream. Now it's becoming true, this dream. So we have to give this important announcement. I spoke with Dr. Elena Bondioli 2 days ago, and she has prepared this paper in which we intend to do the human clinical trial starting in April 2023. And, we will start to select candidates the end of next year, 2022. And, we have some criteria, like people from 18 to 64 years old, which, as you can read, yes, thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Outcomes of circumcision with, functional and neurological damage. We need healthy patients, of course, and we don't want diseases like diabetes, cardiac and vascular pathologies, and we need absence of psychiatric illness, anxiety, depression, and stuff like that. So all these kind of treatments, all the conditions that requiring pharmacological treatment. And of course, they must be negative tests for virus like HIV, HBV, and HCV. So what I want to say is that, when I started, this company, I already said, but I want to repeat, because I'm very excited today to give this announcement, because it's 11 years of big sacrifice to arrive to this moment. And I think that we don't have this problem in Italy. We don't have a circumcision problem in Italy because luckily we are lucky, because the circumcision, it's performed only to adult consenting men, and only for very only for very strong medical reasons. So this is very important. Unfortunately, in the United States, it's performed to everybody. And as I can accept, this surgery to adult men consenting, but my ethics says that I cannot accept to do this kind of surgery to young infants, children, without their will. So, in my opinion, newborn circumcision is a trauma, and it's ingrained in our psychology. So there are concerns and dangers to the infant, and anything that is a danger to an infant, it's a danger to society. This is very, very important for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing thing, where all this work that you put into it. I mean, this is something that, I mean, it's incredible, like the determination that you showed to make this project, to build it up, to find all these people, scientists who are skilled and capable, and you obviously people like me and William and Cunningham and Matthew and everybody obviously who works and who does, things for Foregen. And it's really just an incredible thing to be able to announce and share with everybody, right? It's not just for us, right? It's for all these people around the world who we know that are affected by this and who are looking for a solution. And, I mean, obviously this abstract, I think someone I saw in the chat, we will be publishing this. So this is something that we'll be able to make available to people. They can look at it and kind of see it and look over for themselves. And there's a lot of good details here. And this is something that Dr. Bonvioli put a lot of time into working on. And she really put a lot of effort into, putting this together, and so we can share with all of you. I mean, this is just, it's amazing for me, Enzo, and I'm sure everyone else here too, for William and Cunningham.
Yeah, even for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to kind of just mention, it's kind of I don't know if it's like twist of fate or what, just the fact that you live in Rome, and the Greeks, but also the Romans have a long history of foreskin reconstruction. Like Celsus was, I think, documented one of the first surgical restoration methods back in like 47 AD. And he was, I'm trying to remember if it was Galen or Celsus. One of them was Greek, but lived in Rome, and one of them was Roman. I think Celsus, was Roman. But then you had like various Roman emperors that kind of went on their own crusade to end circumcision and other genital mutilations around the Mediterranean. So it's just, I feel like we're kind of just carrying on this like 2,000-year-old tradition.
That's true. Right, exactly.
Yeah,
carrying it forward.
as you know, the Romans, when invaded the Middle East and Greece, they arrived. They didn't even know that they were doing this to young babies, and as a natural reaction, so the Roman Empire rejected this surgery. And that's why in Europe it's not performed, because then Christianity arrived in 313, if I remember, and the Emperor Constantino, declared that Roman Empire, Christianity, was the religion of the Roman Empire. So the babies are protected. First from the Romans and then from Christianity in Europe. That's why Europe doesn't circumcise.
Yeah, as far as protecting, because I know, I think it was Emperor Hadrian, he passed some law. I'm trying to remember, I think it was Hadrian, where basically banning circumcision. I'm trying to remember. It was very specific though, because there was one of them. It was like they kind of banned it completely, and another. One of his successors kind of changed. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since I read that paper, but like they were very harsh about it, because one was like, if a mother is caught circumcising her child, like she will be like put to death. Wow. Yeah, they were very, very serious about it. It was kind of a lot of kind of hails back to that Greco-Roman view on the beauty of the human body. And any sort of like modification is kind of like abhorrent. Yeah.
I was actually thinking the same long lines as you, Eric, and harken back to several papers that were outlining a lot of the reconstruction techniques that were performed in Rome and Greece. And some of them got into some very in-depth or very complicated surgeries for that era, using like lead powders as antibiotics. And they, a lot of researchers and a lot of people who study ancient culture, they comment on that often. They say, you know, the Greeks and Romans, at their high tide of medicine and expanse, they were very very enthusiastic about helping people reconstruct or sharing their medicine. So, and that was one of the techniques that it looked like they tried to bring that throughout the European theater there, so to speak. So yeah, it was same kind of thought process there.
Yeah, and one actually, I wanted to kind of pull it back here. Well, so obviously, this is the clinical trial is a big announcement, and it's obviously it means so much to everybody. I also wanted to quickly shout out here. This is another announcement going out to everybody. We still have to update the donation bar, but just like during the call here and a little bit before, someone donated close to $4,000 in cryptocurrency, and someone we have a donor. He told me that I could share his name. His name is Pete K. And he donated a little over $99,000 for December. So that means that a little over $103,000 came in donations today. So that combined with our current amount, I know, Enzo, it's a really great month for us. So it means that we've hit our goal there. So we're going to update the donation bar for that shortly. But I wanted to put that in there too. I think it's a great day for Foregen and for everybody who's supported the project, all the donors and people all over the world. You helped to make this happen. And you've contributed so much. So I also wanted to put that piece of information in there as well. Throw that out to all of you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Which is exciting. Yeah.
It's been such a great year, and our supporters have played such a key role in all of that. So again, with all the work that we do, none of it's possible without the consistent support of our donors. And we are just so grateful for all the sacrifices that you have made as well, with your time and your resources contributing to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's our thanks always goes to the donors and supporters, like Ryan said. You know, we wouldn't be able to do it without them. And speaking of which as well, maybe we want to go into some of the questions I think that we had from our live stream here. Let me actually see if I can, let me stop sharing here. And like I said, to be clear to everybody too, that document with the abstract we'll be publishing now. We want to format it properly, and then we'll get it posted on Commentarium for everybody. Put that out there relatively soon, so you can look at that and you can enjoy, and celebrate this great announcement that we have for everybody. So let me actually go over to the questions here. So I think the first one here, so when will these slides be posted in Commentarium? So for the HistologiX ones, William, I think we're definitely we'll look at how we can do that, because we have the slides for it, and we can kind of post the presentation or something with that so people can take a look at it. Because obviously it might be kind of hard to see on a small screen like that on YouTube. But
yeah, we have so kind of adding to that, we do obviously we do continuous updates with HistologiX, and we do continuous collaboration. So we constantly have meetings with them, and we discuss the findings, and we discuss where we're going and what's going on. So there's going to be more information to come. So we might actually have that last set of slides for like CD31. So we might wait till the next meeting with them. I mean, it's up to you actually when we post them. But yeah, we definitely need to get those posted, and we could also do like a blurb with each slide of like what it is, why it's important, stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you can, maybe we and I can work on that together. We can just put a little doc together in Google Docs, and then just write up that, and then I can get it posted on Commentarium. And of course, Ryan, then you can put that out there all across the media and stuff too. People can see that then. Let me see here. Next question. So so the slides, we will post them. It might take a little bit of time, but obviously you want to make sure that when people look at it and they see it, they kind of get the full context and what exactly they're looking at in these pictures. The next one too, is there any possibility of merchandise, accessories, et cetera, that supporters can buy in order to help with fundraising? That's one that we do actually want to look at that. I think for a short time, a little bit back, but we did have like a merchandise store where you could get something like that. But I think we probably got to update that, obviously, with our new logo. And I think we also want to find like a service that can kind of, obviously, so we're not packaging individual things and sending them out. But that's something we want to do, like maybe shirts, maybe some mugs or something. We can kind of find some different things.
Yeah, we've talked about that previously.
Yeah.
That is something that we've been meaning to explore. So thank you for reminding us. But I think that we will incorporate that into our discussions, because I agree. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I mean,
people want to rep the brand, so people want to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, for sure. And let me see here. And then, so this may be kind of a question that goes to you, Cunningham. Someone said, just curious, what about stem cells from bone marrow or plants? Would that partly help at all with the possibility of foreskin regenerating?
What was this second one from?
It says from bone marrow or plants. Would that partly help at all with the
Plants.
possibility of foreskin regenerating?
There's plants, PLA, green things.
Yeah, plant. Yeah, with leaves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't understand.
Sorry.
Well, that's what I thought. Well, no, that's what I thought you said, but I wanted to make sure. Because plants, I would probably say, I don't think that's gonna
Work.
I know we've talked in the past, Eric, about like the decellularization of some plants. So that might be a possibility.
Because that's actually one of the really cool things that's being done. If I wasn't doing this, this is probably what I'd be doing. Is kind of this study of using plant-derived biomaterials, because most biomaterials are kind of expensive. There's a paper I've got floating around somewhere on my computer that has like this big table of all these like commercial biomaterials you can buy, and I think it's all in like cubic centimeters or like a milliliter of each material, and some of them are like thousands of dollars. But the idea was like using plants, like cellulose from plants, scaffolds. There's actually really cool work being done on, I know tobacco plants specifically, but I believe there's some others, but there's more on tobacco plants, but using recombinant tobacco plants to create human collagen that can be then used for tissue engineering applications, which is I think at some point that's probably where all of our collagen will probably come from. I think we're still a few years off from that. Just
to kind of clarify though, Eric, is that would be a material that is decellularized before use?
Yes.
It's not necessarily. Okay, so to kind of answer the question that was thrown at us, that would be more,
So I'm getting sidetracked. But as far as I'll say plants in general, that's about the extent of deriving things from plants for our application. Can't say the rest for others, because like there's a lab up in Canada that they've been doing some stuff with, I think it was like tulip petals. And it had to do with like the hydrophobicity of the tulip petals, and it was like perfect for some application. I forget, it was really cool, but I'm forgetting what it was. But anyway, from bone marrow, so there are, I don't know how many types of stem cells there are off the top of my head, but some are easier to access than others, and depending on like one of the professors I used to work with did a lot of work with adipose tissue or fat tissue, and there's been a lot of really promising work using adipose stem cells for various applications, because the big problem with bone marrow derived stem cells is it's very invasive, as opposed to what I think a lot of researchers are kind of starting to go towards for more clinical applications is basically stem cells derived from blood. because that's relatively less invasive. I believe I think we can do all of anything we need to do with stem cells. I believe we can, I think, just derive it all from blood. I'd have to double check though.
I think that's what she mentioned in her plan too, right?
Yeah, I believe that's what
I
I believe that's what Elena says also.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of answers whoever had that question about the bone marrow and the plants. Give you a little bit of information there from Cunningham. And I think, let me see here. This might be, I think, Enzo, we can answer this one. It says, who will perform the operation and where will it be, a medical center or what? I think, if I remember the name, it was the Ancona Hospital, I believe, right? Where they're thinking about.
Yeah, I spoke with Elena about that, and we don't know. Yeah, probably should be the hospital of Ancona, but we haven't decided yet. That's the real answer, because probably could be also the hospital in the city where Dottor Elena Bondioli works, which is Cesena in Italy.
So she knows her way around there.
Yeah, we have to decide which of the two. Yeah.
And then one of her colleagues, of course, will be helping to perform the surgeries. The one doctor you mentioned, right?
Yeah, there are, of course, other doctors involved.
Right.
One of them, I'm going to meet him next Tuesday. It's Dr. Michele Riccio. He's the plastic surgeon that will do, the work, the most difficult work to match the blood vessels, which is, very difficult at that level.
All microsurgery type stuff. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
That's why we have very talented people working for us, right, Enzo?
Yeah.
Smart people.
Yeah. Smart, very smart people, I have to say. Yes, very smart, very smart.
Yeah. So then for the next part here, the next question we have is, for the clinical trials, does the participants have to be Italian? In regards to human trials, for someone who is stationed in the US, will travel expenses be covered? I mean, as far as I know, I don't think they need to be Italian, right? I don't think that's necessary.
They don't need to be Italians. Yeah. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So really, for us, it'll be just the criteria that Elena talked about, or Elena talked about in her plan. So basically, if you're healthy, you test negative for like HIV and things. But so it doesn't. You don't have to be Italian to be in the clinical trial. And then as far as what is the other question here? They say, as far as, so for example, someone who's stationed or living in the US, will travel expenses be covered? I think right now we're anticipating we would cover that, right? So if someone needs to fly there, because obviously they need to stay at the hospital and, for whatever time they need to observe them and follow up with them as well.
Yes.
Yeah, to answer your question, yes.
That's what we want to do. Yes, we want to cover those expenses as well, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward then. And the other question here too, we have, how will foreskin restoration affect the procedure? If you restore, what will the process be like to reconstruct? How will it go? I mean, I think, for me, like the answer that I think that we have basically is, we can't be 100% sure right now, in terms of the human trial, but once we get there, we'll have a better idea. And I think, well, really our message is always that if we need to develop something that's more special or something for men who are restored or restoring, we will do that, because we know that there's a lot of men out there who are doing that. And, obviously they want to have maybe like a regenerated one where it has stuff like the ridge band.
Well, I can say also that we are thinking to, all the people that have already restored. So we are thinking to make a specific procedure only for them, which has to do with the Messner corpuscles. This is our intention. This is what we want to do. So, we are thinking also to the restored people that we know there are thousands of people.
Yeah, like I said, our goal is always to help as many men as we can, right? However we can do that.
Yes.
So for sure, I wouldn't worry about that if you're restored or restoring. And it says here, do you guys anticipate any major hurdles to get over, or is it just putting in the time and the money? I mean, I
didn't understand the question.
I'll read it again to you. It says, do you guys anticipate any major hurdles to get over? Like hurdles are challenges, or is it just putting in the time and money? You
I
get that
don't know
question,
what
Emily?
are Medj. How did you say Medj? Medj at the beginning. I couldn't
Oh,
understand
like
that word. I'm sorry.
do you guys anticipate or think there will be like big challenges, or is it just like money and time like that we need?
Ah, that's a good question. I mean, what do you?
Well, well, I
Yeah.
think what Cunningham talked about in his when he brought up like the discussion for the animal trials and the human trial, part of it is going to be in this second part what Dr.
Yes.
Palumbo is doing and making sure
Yes.
that you have basically testing to see kind of, you mentioned biocompatibility as well as
Mhm.
how like the cells proliferate and things like that, vascularization, of course, that's
Yeah.
going to play a
Yes.
big role. So that's why the second part of animal trials is so important. So really, I mean, if there's any challenge, it's likely going to be there, right? And obviously in terms of the time and the money, there's some things that, money, for example, can help with. But let's say, with Dr. Bondioli, she needs to make her application to the ethics committee and the regulatory committee. Some of that, it's just basically they have to look at the plan, see the research, the things that she's done so far, and approve it. So some of that is is part of what they're doing. We can't really control all of that, obviously. So I would say kind of a combination. I mean, challenges in the sense that there's new things we have to take a look at, but I would remind people we have very talented scientists. Dr. Palumbo is a very smart woman. Same with Dr. Bondioli. They've done a lot of work in the field so far. Many publications that she's published and patents that she holds. So, I'm confident they'll be able to overcome whatever they face there. So,
And
I think it's
might interject and say
yeah.
that one of the reasons we're doing the histology study and we're thinking about these other things like biocompatibility and the future of how we're going to get these scaffolds and materials is to try to overcome or at least identify these hurdles before they arrive at our doorstep, so to speak.
Right.
So, for example, with the histology study, and just to also mention that this with the histology study, there's also histology work being done by very talented Dr. Rossi, pathologist in Italy, working directly with Foregen. And like with that, those forces combined, HistologiX, Dr. Rossi, and the other members of Foregen, we're trying to identify these things. And part of the histology study is to identify the networks of different cells and identify the proper natural structure so that we can maybe identify what might be a hurdle or what might be challenging in the future and come up with a plan before the time comes. So.
No, it's definitely a good point to emphasize, William, is that it shows kind of how these different parts of the research kind of, fit and meld together and why they're so important. And that's why we need to do for example, the histology study as well. Let me see here. And then, so it says here, if you donate now, well, I guess they wanted to make a comment. If you donate now, you have a chance to receive Enzo's handcrafted HUFO. Yes. So obviously that's part of, so let me just double check. I'm telling people the, the right information. So on our donate page, we have, yes. So if you donate $5,000, you'll get a handmade HUFO from Enzo. So a very nice detailed sculpture that he's designed and he's made himself. And he's exhibited at many different places. So it's something that's a very special and detailed representation of what the foreskin is. You'll get a signed photo of him. I think, Enzo, we're going to have one of you in maybe your studio, right? I think that's something that we'll probably put together for the people who donate that. And then you also get a signed letter from me as well as from Cunningham, obviously expressing our thanks, as, from the organization for your donation. And then also, so that's if you donate, that's like you're guaranteed to get one, that $5,000. But then we also have, we have 3 donors. So basically, if you donate $10 or more, so before matching, if you throw in a relatively small amount, we're also going to choose 3 people at random. And that way, we'll look at the entire list of donations and transactions that we have, and we'll pick 3 people at random. We'll basically send those out. And then we obviously will communicate with those people beforehand just to say, hey, you were selected for this. If you want to receive it, let us know. And if you prefer not to, that's okay. Obviously, let us know if you want to receive some of these things. If you prefer to not, for example, get physical mail, make sure you let us know. We'll obviously communicate that to you. But that's also something available as well for donors. And let me go over here. So that won't be covered. And then this one, probably we can maybe you, Cunningham, and William and me kind of look at this. But it says here, someone says, some low cuts take too much inner skin and some high cuts high cuts take too much outer skin, will Foregen's procedure be able to regenerate a fix for this? So basically, some cuts, they take too much inner skin, and some cuts take too much outer skin. And will we be able to fix that?
So, one thing I need to make really clear,
Yeah,
that it seems because a lot of the questions we get just in general can kind of be answered generally by making this better known, that with reconstructive surgery, in general, there's not a one size fits all procedure, I'll say, for patients. Every single patient is always assessed individually. And the surgeons get very familiar with the defects in the anatomy, and how they would go about repairing it to where it'd be considered normal, or whatever it is they're trying to do.
Desired result.
Yeah. This is going to be absolutely no different. And it just sounds like, if I understand the question correctly, it's basically it basically just comes down to the amount of inner foreskin versus outer foreskin that remains, or shaft skin. I believe this, whatever scaffold is used, because like we're saying right now, we're using decellularized donor tissue, and that is going to have a very, 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 or each one is going to have its own unique anatomy. And one of the challenges would be to take that unique scaffold and
pair it with a equally unique
fit
patient.
it. Exactly. Once we kind of move beyond that into fabricating our own scaffolds, this becomes a lot easier. But I don't see it being too much of an issue. It would just kind of be a very, very particular scaffold would end up having to be used.
This is something that Tyler and I have spoken about as
Mhm.
well. I know it comes up almost every other meeting that we have. And one of the to kind of compound on the question that was asked, is just as unique as tissue regenerative medicine is, unfortunately, there is a uniqueness to each genital mutilation. So with that in mind, and like you mentioned, Eric, and Tyler and I have talked about this a little bit as well, essentially it's going to be a case-by-case basis. There's not a factory making a thing that we're going to be installing, not quite yet. So in the near future, what we project is that it's going to be a consultation with the surgeon. The surgeon's going to identify and assess what needs to be done and how to do it. And from there, they're going to tailor the procedure essentially to each individual patient. If that's kind of what you were talking about, with maybe slightly different words, or kind of compounding on what you mentioned.
Yeah, that was kind of the more formal way of how it would go, more patient oriented.
Distilling the scientific.
Yeah.
Let me see. So we got one more question that we can get to, because obviously it's been about almost an hour and a half now. So someone said here, we can just address it briefly, but let's say someone has developed issues with his shaft skin, or some minor cosmetic concerns as a birthmark. Is it possible to replace more skin or shaft skin with the procedure? I think kind of relates to what you mentioned, like how it's kind of a specific approach to each patient, right? And we're gonna have to kind of look at exactly what their situation is and how we can kind of address it. I think that makes the most sense, right? Just what I
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah, because say the question again. It
It says, let's say someone has developed issues with his shaft skin or some minor cosmetic concerns such as a birthmark, etc. Is it possible to replace more skin, shaft skin with the procedure?
okay. Yeah. So I guess if I understand it right, that kind of what we just kind of said kind of answers that, I think.
Yeah, I think right, because basically kind of that
Mhm.
specific case we're gonna, well, each person's kind of a specific or special case. and
Yeah,
we'll
because
look at
it's
that on that
everybody's
basis.
anatomy is different. The donor tissues is going to be, there's going to be variation there, and then like William said, every circumcision is basically different because
Right.
I mean, kind of where along the shaft it's done, but then also there's different methods of doing it. So like there's not there won't be
Surprisingly not
once.
standard.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly
Right.
not standard for a standardized practice.
Yeah. So, well, and then also there's a paper. I don't know why I didn't cite it in my ethics paper. But it was, I think it was some Canadian physicians, and they were, I think they were like more like pro circumcision in general, but the their findings were most physicians are not really trained on how to even do it, quote unquote, correctly. So that will undoubtedly introduce
Right.
even more variation.
And I know there's papers written about the variation requests from parents. That some parents request variations or request. So it's there's to kind of compound on what we mentioned earlier. It's going to be a case by case consultation with each patient, and from that consultation, the different minutia, the different details will be figured out by the surgeon and the patient on that level, and then from there, a plan of reconstruction can be made. I think that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just to kind of sum it up, basically kind of a specific approach. And yeah, so obviously, we'd like to kind of stay here and talk about some of your questions, but obviously, it's a bit late over by Enzo in Italy there. It's, close to 11 o'clock his time. It's past his bedtime in Italy, he's getting sleepy. But, obviously, we're, if you have additional questions, of course, if you want to kind of interact with me and with some of our other volunteers and staff, we have our Telegram and our Discord if you want to donate for those. For Discord, it starts at $5 a month. Obviously we have our social media and support email, but there we're also engaged with our audience as well. And, we are, frequent that and are in the chat sometimes and posting things and comments and sources and all these different things. Obviously it's a very good place for people if they want to have a community, obviously, around this. And so, yeah, I think that we can kind of probably wrap up our live stream here. And, obviously I want to thank all of you guys for joining me with this and for being here. I think it was a really good discussion that we had, talked about all kinds of different things. We had some really great announcements. We have, that human clinical trials abstract that we'll be putting out there. We'll be publishing that, the information from HistologiX, which of course, Ryan, I'll be coordinating with him on probably in the next week or so to get that out there. We'll be talking. And of course, the big donations that came in today. So that's, a lot of great things that came at the end of the year for us here. And we're obviously so grateful, to all the supporters and donors out there who helped to make this happen and who have brought us to this point. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here and we'll say good night from our end here, Enzo, and everyone else is kind of the afternoon time. So
thank you.
Tyler,
Thank you.
talk again soon.
Yeah.
Quick question for you, Tyler. Is this being recorded, and where can people find the recording?
Yeah, so it'll be on our YouTube channel. So like right now it's like live. So I'll be ending the stream in a second, but it'll be up there on the YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it again, no problem.
Yeah, I think if you just follow the link, it'll just be like a normal YouTube video.
Okay, and then if people have questions related to some of the info we had in this video, can they comment on there, or is there somewhere else they should go on Foregen's website to ask the questions?
I think they can comment on like the actual video itself, or like I said, on our media, or obviously support our support email as well. There's a page for that. But yeah, there's some different avenues
Okay.
for people that
Nice.
they can ask questions from. Yeah. So excuse me. Yeah. So I will be ending the stream now. So thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. All right.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. I think that should.